Okay, let's go, shall we? Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Baradhari Ha Giri Baradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Bhagavatam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Ashto Tadasadashi Śrīmad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Śrīla Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki Nidai Gaura Premanandi Namo Meshwaraya Krishna Sabadai Shmani Balijam Prabhupada Namane Namo Meshwaraya Krishna Sabadai Samadi Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pichana Namaste Yavadi Pasha Chate Chitane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya We're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 31, text number 30 and 31, which is the end of the fourth canto. Sri Shuka Uvacha Ityanamya Tam Amantya Viduro Gajasavayam Svanam Didrikshu Prayayo Gyatinam Nivritasaya Shri Shukuruvacha Ityanamya Tamamantya Viduro Gajasavayam Svanam Didrikshu Prayayo Gyatinam Nivritasaya Shri Shukuruvacha Iti anamya tamamrantya Viduro Gajasavayam Svanam Didrikshu Prayayo Gyatinam Nivritasaya Sri Sukuruvacha Ityanamya Tamamrantriya Viduro Gajasavayam Svanam Didrikshu Prayayo Gyatinam Nivritasaya Sri Sukuruvacha Ityanamya Tamamrantya Viduro Gajasavayam Svanam Didrikshu Prayayo Gyatinam Nivritasaya Shri Sukuruvacha Ityanamya Tamamrantriya Viduro Gajasavayam Svanam Didrikshu Prayayo Gyatinam Nivritasaya Sri Sukuruvacha Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Iti, thus, anamya, offering obeisances. Tam unto Maitreya, amantriya, taking permission. Viduraha, Vidura, Gaja Sahavyayam, the city of Hastinapur, Svanam, own, Didrikshuhu, desiring to see, Prayayo, left that place, Gatinam, of his kinsman, Nivritta Asayaha, free from material desires. Sukadeva Goswami continued, Vidura thus offered obeisances under the great sage Maitreya, and, taking his permission, started for the city of Hastinapur to see his own kinsman, although he had no material desires. Purport. When a saintly person wants to see his kinsman, he has no material desires to see them. Material desire to see them. He simply wants to give them some instructions so that they can benefit. Vidura belonged to the royal family of the Kauravas, and although he knew that all the family members were destroyed at the Battle of Kurukshetra, he nonetheless wanted to see his elder brother Dhritarashtra, to see if he could deliver Dhritarashtra from the clutches of Maya. When a great saintly person like Vidura sees his relatives, he desires only to deliver them from the clutches of Maya. Vidura thus offered his respectful obeisances to his spiritual master and departed for the city of Hastinapur, the kingdom of the Kauravas. Etadya Srinuyad Rajan Ragyam Hari Arpitatmanam Ayurdhanam Yasha Svasti Gatim Aishwaryam Apnuyat. O King, those who hear these topics about kings who are completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, obtain without difficulty a long life, wealth, good reputation, good fortune, and ultimately the opportunity to return home back to Godhead. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 31st chapter of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, entitled Narada Instructs the Prachetas. End of the 4th canto. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahiyam Dadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Garim Yad Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam. So, after extensive conversations with Maitreya, Vidura is leaving that place where he had met Maitreya, and is now going to Hastinapur. And there's a distinction here. He's going to see his relatives. Yet he is described here as Nivritta Asayaha. And Prabhupada mentions he had no material desire to see his family. Because he knew that most of them were not present any longer. Because Vidura had left the palace at Hastinapur after being insulted by Duryodhana and effectively by Dhritarashtra. And so, and Vidura had all along been giving them good counsel. Yet Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana had set their course, and it was impossible for Vidura to correct them. They were of such a bent, bent out of shape, and they were so focused on taking away from the Pandavas what was rightfully theirs. And of course Vidura is a great devotee, as we've seen from these conversations. And as we've seen previously in the first canto, in his instructions and encouragement or protection even of the devotees, right? Protection of the Pandavas. So, and in one sense, Vidura didn't really have a good reason to visit them for family, chit-chats and friendly dealings, because he'd left home because they'd insulted him. So the notion of going home to enjoy the company of his family, that just wasn't on the horizon, because he'd left because of their misbehaviour, basically, and their inability to appreciate Vidura's counsel and his company, his association. They couldn't take advantage of it, So his motivation wasn't to have, to spend time with just hanging out with the family. Right? So what was his, why? And here Prabhupada explains. He wanted to see Dhritarashtra, his older brother, to see if he could extract him from the... And that's eventually what he did do. We've already read that in the earlier cantos. That Dhritarashtra was in a very embarrassing situation, in that he had plotted, schemed, connived, Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana and the family of the Kauravas wanted to dethrone the Pandavas and basically cheat them of what was rightfully theirs. Dhritarashtra was blind in more ways than one, materially and spiritually blind, and Duryodhana also. They couldn't. This is why Dhritarashtra was deeply concerned about the outcome of the battle of Kurukshetra. And in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, he's asking Sanjay, who had the power to see what was going on. Dhritarashtra knew that the Pandavas and the Kauravas had gone to Kurukshetra with the purpose of settling their differences once and for all. But Dhritarashtra knew that he was deeply concerned about two things. The, what's that for? iPad. No, iPad's okay. I probably won't use it. He was deeply concerned about the influence of the location, right? Kurukshetra, as a sacred place of yajna, of sacrifice, for millennia. It was Kurukshetra is a famous place of pilgrimage even before the Battle of Kurukshetra, and a place of spiritual potency. So he was worried about that. Has an effect. Right? Just like the temple has an effect. There's nothing material within the walls of this 197 to 205 Dank Street. Everything is being used in Krishna's service, so it has a potency. And people notice it when they come here. You know, we used to, when people were coming regularly to the temple, 4 or 5 reviews on our Google business listing, right? And everybody was 4 or 5 stars, usually 5. And everybody's saying how peaceful it is and how nice the prasadam is. Right? So it has an impact. Right? I remember I used to be a member of a multi-faith group, and we hosted that group more than one occasion, but there were Anglican priests, there were Catholic brothers, there were Uniting Church members, and they came for this meeting at the temple, and we gave them lunch, as you do. And one of the priests said to me, he said, "That was my first vegetarian meal." So it was really good. But then he said, I get a sense of presence here that I've not felt or that reminds me of the temples that I visited in Asia. He's been to Thailand, so he visited the Buddhist temples and the various Angkor Wat, and he said, I feel the same presence here as I did in those places. Right? So, we used to also feel that in, you'd be out on book distribution or be out doing a collection. And it was, wearying, hard day's work. You felt tired and having to deal with so many people. And but as soon as you drove in the back gate and came into Radhaballabha's backyard, you just feel all of everything just go. So there's potency. There's potency in a tirtha, sacred place, right? And of course that place is made sacred by the activities of the devotees there, right? Just in the Bhagavatam, in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, it's mentioned how we go to a sacred place not just to take bath. Although, when we would come back from Sankirtan, first thing we would do is have a shower, right? Take bath, because then one is That's part of the purification process. It's a mode of goodness to regularly take bath. Right? Brahmanas take bath 3 times a day. Sannyasis 3 times a day. Right? Because, just the act of having the water contact the skin, the body, and cleaning off the detritus, is it? Yeah, of existence, of activities, of action. Refreshes the mind and the senses. Right? It's refreshing. And then one's able to get the benefit of the holy place with that purified mind and senses that comes from just taking a bath. Simple thing, right? Just taking a bath. It has power. And by that purification then, by chanting Hare Krishna and by hearing, and that's the key element of bhakti begins with hearing, right? Shravanam kirtanam, Vishnu smaranam, remembering. So Dhritarashtra was concerned about the association of the place, but he was also concerned about the association of the Pandavas because they were devotees. And he knew that their saintly character, their saintly demeanour might influence the determination of the Kauravas to fight. Right? Might change their minds. The influence of the place and the influence of the devotees. Right? Of course, that wasn't to be. But he was concerned. Dhritarashtra knew the potency of the association of devotees. And he was concerned about it because he's effectively asuric, right? Demoniac. He didn't want to acquiesce and to negotiate a peaceful settlement, which they could have done. Right? But because of the envy, the strong envy of the Pandavas. Prabhupada describes how envy is when you want something somebody else has and you don't want them to have it, even though it's rightfully theirs. That's envy. Right? So, Vidura, and Vidura, Dhritarashtra, because Dhritarashtra is Vidura's brother, he knew of Vidura's Shakti, potency. He's a great devotee. And but because Duryodhana had insulted Vidura, and they'd insulted him many times, and they were ignoring his good advice, and Vidura could see what the outcome was going to be, so he left. Right? And of course, at the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra, when all that Vidura could foresee had taken place, still Vidura was concerned about the spiritual well-being of his brother, Dhritarashtra. And so, he was prepared to go to Hastinapur, not so much to spend time with. Of course, he wanted to see the Pandavas also. But, as Prabhupada points out here, his main purpose, and this is the purpose of the devotees when they visit anybody, is to elevate them spiritually. This is not to get some material benefit or to have some material pleasure, although that may be a a consequence or a corollary of visiting your family. You know, you have some chats and remember the good old times and whatever. My nephew's has just he got married at the beginning of last year, and his wife's just had a baby, so we'll go and play with the baby. Right? My brother sends me pictures of the little grandson, right? And you know, it's a form of entertainment, I guess. Of course, he's completely the mode of ignorance. So, you know, these are the kind of things, this is what family life is all about. And, but that's, you know, Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita that family members they're a source of, or they're a, you know, there's a natural affection that one will have for one's family. That's normal. Right? Of course, you know, depends on how abusive your parents are. You know, there are some families where you don't want to see your mother and father or your brothers and sisters because they're too crazy, right? Which is but natural, you know, in a natural environment, the affection of the parents and the siblings is a source of comfort. There's a feeling of protection. Right? Your parents are a source of inspiration because they put so much into looking after their children. Your mum and dad put effort into looking after you? Yeah? Yep. Yeah, that's normal. And so, you know, and your brothers, you grew up with your brothers and your sisters. And so there's friendship. There's a natural, in the Sakya rasa, right? And Vatsalya rasa, there's natural feelings of affection, and the children feel friendship for one another as siblings and feel a sense of protection from the parents because the parents spend so much time looking after you. Right? So there's a natural inspiration that comes from spending time with your family. Natural. It's so these are just natural exchanges of affection and appreciation and love. This is normal, natural. But that's not Vidura's motivation to go and spend time. And we can be inspired by Vidura's example. And rather, you know, it's described in the beginning of the Bhagavatam how saintly persons go to the householder's residence to around about milking time, right? Just to get a little bit of milk so that they can beg some sustenance. But their purpose is not just to get something to eat, but rather it's to give good association, sadhu sangha, because by that association one is inspired to think of the higher purposes of life, right? Certainly, family life is a big responsibility and requires focus and attention. Bhaktivedanta Thakur mentions that there are instructions for the renounced order and there are instructions for the householders. Right? And they differ. But each one of them has their responsibilities and also their spiritual focus. Like I'm reading the introduction to the Upanishad, and Prabhupada says that we are not Hindus. We are not Hindus. He said that on more than one occasion. Of course, Prabhupada says we are also Hindus. Right? We are Hindus. We're Hindus. One time there was this guy from this gentleman from Iran, I think, or he might have been from Pakistan. Anyway, he was a Muslim, and I used to see him around Albert Park, and we used to say good day. There are some people that you just naturally just can connect with, right? So I used to just see him around. And then one day he stopped me and he said, "Why did you become a Hindu?" Why did you become a Hindu? And I said to him, when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, I didn't know that I was becoming a Hindu. That wasn't what I was doing. I was pursuing my spiritual life. I was uncovering my spiritual identity rather than thinking, I'm an Australian, I'm a Christian, or whatever it is that we think we are. I wanted to connect with myself, right? Atma Tattva, that's what I was interested in, right? Knowledge of the self, not being a Hindu. That just happened later on. I just found out that I was a Hindu. I didn't realise that's what I was doing. And Prabhupada said, we're Hindus, right? But Prabhupada also said, we're not Hindus, right? We're transcendental to Christian this, that, or the other thing. These are different, denominations or designations that are just external, right? The real identity is we're not the body, we're the spirit soul within, right? Without the spirit soul, what have you got? You've just got a dead body, useless, right? So it's interesting, Prabhupada says, we are not Hindus, we are followers of Varnashram. That's a very interesting statement, right? Because Lord Chaitanya says we're not followers of Varnashram. Which is I guess, there are numerous contradictions, right, in life, right? Here's one of them, We're affectionate to our family members, but actually we should be detached. And we should connect on the spiritual platform, not on the material platform. But we will connect on the material platform. That's silly to think that you won't. And a little, what should we say, unappreciative and insensitive, right? If we're just dealing with our family members, you're not the body, you're a spirit soul, and just preaching all the time. Huh? Although that's the purpose. So there's going to be a natural exchange of affection, but at the same time the devotee wants to inject spiritual knowledge. Right? That's the most important thing. In the Bhagavatam, family members, wealth, right, servants, power, all of these things are described as fallible soldiers because, we think we're going to be protected by these things. But at the time of death, no one can protect you. Right? No one. And Prabhupada tells the story of a wealthy businessman that he knew who was dying, and he was begging his doctor, "Can you just give me 2 more years to live?" And the doctor, couldn't. So, we think of the doctor's going to protect me. But as Vasudeva points out, when he's instructing Kamsa, your death comes with your birth. Right? Your death comes with birth. We're going to die. You're born, okay, the rules are, in this game, you have to die. But you've died so many times, this is his point. You've had so many bodies. He gives you the example of how when you go to sleep at night, you dream. And in your dream, you accept so many bodies. And then when you wake up in the morning, you just give it up. Oh, that was a dream. And so similarly also, so many births we've had. But each one of them now, what is it? It's just a dream. Right? So why be worried about death? Because we're giving up. And his point was, every moment we're dying. Right? We're dying at every moment. The body that we had just then is now gone. And we now got a new body. We keep on. This is called reincarnation. We're doing it all the time. Right? So this understanding that we're not the body, which Vidura was completely fixed in. Completely fixed. And despite the fact that he had affection, or he had natural affection for his brother and his nephews, and was their well-wisher. But they didn't want to hear. But that was his purpose. His purpose now is to go to Hastinapur and try to extract Dhritarashtra out of his griha maidi existence. And he was successful. We know that he was successful because that's in the previous cantos. He was successful in instructing Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra gave up, left home, didn't tell, he and Gandhari didn't tell anybody, just went to the forest. Right? Powerful character. We can see, even though Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana and the others were asuras, demoniac, they were still very powerful personalities, strong character, very strong, principled people. And Dhritarashtra was able to leave home and successfully leave his body, focused on his spiritual identity rather than his. He was of enough character and training and education to give up the family situation, and which we all have to give up. That's the point. We all have to die. And be fixed in consciousness, preferably with that understanding that I'm not this body, but I'm a servant of Krishna. Jivera Svarupa Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. So that's our meditation. That should be and Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, what you meditate on at the time of death, that's the destination that you go to. And so that's why it's recommended in the final, and why Prabhupada says we are Varnashramites, if you like, because Varnashram means for social and 4 ashram or 4 stations in life, and the final stage is tyagi, give it up, sannyas. Right? That's the final stage, and of course that can manifest in a variety of ways, but ideally, in the final years of one's existence, one gives up the material connections and spends the time focused on meditating on one's spiritual identity. That's the purpose of life, is to understand one's spiritual identity. And by chanting Hare Krishna and by hearing and the instructions of the Bhagavatam, of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Bhakti Shastri, right? And associating with the devotees and hearing from the devotees, then one remains fixed in consciousness. And why Srila Prabhupada was saying, it says in the beginning of the Upanishad that we are Varnashram, we are followers of Varnashram, right? Because the Varnashram is designed, and this is why anybody who follows the Varnashram system is very dear to Krishna, because the Varnashram system focuses ultimately on spiritual advancement, spiritual realization, making spiritual progress. It means, as a householder, fulfilling the responsibilities and the requirements of a householder, but with a spiritual foundation, right? With a spiritual focus. Not that one, as a householder suddenly wants to become a sannyasi. No. That's done later on in life. So, or if one is advanced, it depends on a person's advancement. Generally speaking, most people go brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, that progression through life. But of course there are individuals who show detachment right from the beginning, and so are able to then maintain that mood of detachment. And the ability to maintain that sense of detachment, as Madhavananda mentioned yesterday, is predicated by one's attachment for Krishna. Right? He was making the point, you don't need to worry about what you're attached to. Just make yourself attached to Krishna, then automatically all the other stuff will go away, right, over time. So, Vidura was such a personality who was very detached because of his spiritual advancement from early on in his life. And because he was a great devotee. Right? Param drištva nivartate. Rasavajam rasopyasya param drištva nivartate. Because the devotees are experiencing a higher taste, they're not then engaged in the lower activities, the gross material. And so then there's a disconnect from the material, and there's a connection and attachment to the spiritual. So Vidura is situated in that consciousness, and so his motivation for going to see his brother wasn't, let's go and have a good time with my brother, but let me go and see if I can extract him, help push or pull him out of this material concept of life. This is the motivation of the devotee. Any comments or questions? Nrikeshari.
Thank you for the nice class, Prabhu. My question is not very intelligent question, but still it's in my mind. I was wondering, what is the timeline? Like when Vidura was speaking with Maitreya, was that was before Dhritarashtra left home? So is he now going to Hastinapur to send Dhritarashtra home, or was it afterwards?
What was that?
Before
what?
Before Dhritarashtra left home.
Before. Vidura must have been talking to Maitreya more or less at the same time that the Battle of Kurukshetra was taking place. You would think by the setting here. Right? But it could be after, it could be sometime after, because, it was all over by the shouting, and Dhritarashtra was living with Yudhisthira and the Pandavas.
Do you mind giving a quick recap of who's speaking and how we got there? Because I remember that Krishna was passing away, and then I think Uddhava was there.
Yep.
And then I think Vidura also. And then Vidura got sent away to seek Maitreya, wasn't it like that?
Yes. Yep.
But that must have been after the Battle of Kurukshetra.
It is. Yep.
So then how?
Just after.
Okay.
Yep. And then later on Krishna departs also. I'd have to refresh my memory on, I can't give you a potted, Mahabharata right now.
Okay.
But you can easily, it's not difficult to work it out.
I thought I'd do it a quick way and just ask.
Yeah, it'd be good if I had the time to do that research last night, but I didn't. I thought of it, but then I was doing 20 other things. But I think the main point here is that he was compassionate to that's the main point. The chronology is kind of good to know, but the essential element of this is the compassion that Vidura, as a great devotee, feels for his family members, rather than, he's just wanted to go and see his brother to remember good old times. That wasn't what he was there for. And they weren't good old times anyway, because there was a huge amount of conflict between them. And why Vidura left home. And the conflict was enough for Vidura to, I'm getting out of here, these guys are, right? And so the impetus for him to go back wouldn't have been particularly strong, right? Wouldn't have been. And so that's why it's mentioned here, nivrittasayaha, free from material desires. His motivation was purely to help extract Dhritarashtra from his material situation and push him forward to his spiritual destination. And then at the end here, it says, those who hear these topics about kings who are completely surrendered, and this is a feature of the Bhagavatam, because we've got the Prachetas who were going to be rulers, right, and who performed austerities, but in the process strengthened their bhakti such that Lord Vishnu appeared before them, gave them a benediction. And really they were materially prosperous, but they were also great devotees. So, you might be scratching your head wondering, why are we hearing all of these stories about kings? If we look at Lord Chaitanya's example, when he was asked to spend some time with Maharaj Prataparudra, who was a great devotee, Lord Chaitanya said no. He said to Ramananda Roy, it was Ramananda Roy, I think. He said, if you mention this again, I'm leaving. Right? Of course, Maharaj Prataparudra was a great devotee, and it might have been Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. It was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was trying to encourage Lord Chaitanya to meet Maharaj Prataparudra. But Lord Chaitanya wouldn't have for a sannyasi to associate with a king is suicide. Right? Suicide. That's what Lord Chaitanya said. Right? Which is why Bhaktivedanta Thakur says there's two instructions, those for the renunciates and those for the householders. Right? Two distinct instructions. So the Bhagavatam saying here, in answer, why were we hearing about all of these kings, pounds, shillings and pence, administrators? And this is sometimes a problem in ISKCON. Devotees think, he's a manager, just a materialist. Right? Management, what a dirty word. But it is not. It is not. Why does the Bhagavatam look at, generations upon generations of saintly kings who are essential for the advancement of the whole society, actually, right? And here it says at the end of the Bhagavatam, those who hear these topics about kings, and what is the qualification of the king? He's ragyam hari arpitatmanam. Everything that he does is an offering to Krishna. Right? Arpita. Who have given. Arpita means to offer. Atmanam, the self. Right? Arpita, atmanam. Hari. Yeah, so Ragyam, the king, or the kings in this case, Hari to the Lord, Arpita, offering, Atmanam, themselves. Right. So whoever hears stories about these kings who are completely surrendered to Hari, right? What do they get? Ayu, life, duration of life. Dhanam, money, wealth, what everybody's looking for. Right? Good reputation, yashaha. Swasti, good fortune. Om swasti, om swasti, om swasti. Right? And not only that, gatim, the ultimate goal of life, which is to go back home, back to Godhead, as Prabhupada translates here, and aishvaryam, opulence. Right? When you think about it, I was just a hippie. I had nothing really when I became a devotee. And all of my life I've lived in Albert Park. Right? Usually you need a bit of money just to live in this place. Is that right? Prajaraj? And people give me money. Right? People just give us money. And we have something to wear. We've got a roof over our heads. We get to eat fantastic food all the time. Right? So we're completely looked after. Even I remember 20 years ago, on occasion, I'd be walking around the city doing my business or whatever, people would open up doors for me. I think, well, what are you doing that for? So people respect devotees. They just naturally will respect them. You know, one time I went to the bank. Yadaba was leaving. Yadaba had visited Melbourne. He was, I think at that time he was negotiating for some original footage. You know, there was a huge amount of footage taken of Srila Prabhupada in Melbourne because it was a professional film cameraman, or he might have been a director. Anyway, William Kerr, his name was, William. And that's why you'll see in all of the videos lots of footage of Prabhupada in Melbourne. Really, you know, good quality. You know, the conversations that Prabhupada had with the lawyers, Wally Strauss and those guys up in the, you know, and Prabhupada on the Vyasasan, giving class, walks, lots of. Huh? Yes, in the gardens, right? So, what was going to be my point? Forgotten what my point was going to be. Oh, Yadaba, yes, yeah. And he'd received some donations. He'd been in Australia and he'd received. So we went to the bank, right? And he was changing some money and I was just waiting for him. I'd driven him in, you know, spending a bit of time with him before he left. He was leaving that evening, I think, that night. And then this Indian boy came up to me and he gave me a Bhagavad Gita. And I said to him, I said, look, it's my job to give you the Bhagavad Gita, not you give me the Bhagavad Gita. Right? And he said, no, I want you to have it. I'm leaving Australia. He was leaving too. I'm leaving Australia, you know. And I wanted to. I didn't want to take the Bhagavad Gita. I said, look, I got 5 Bhagavad Gitas. I don't need any more. You know, I got enough Bhagavad Gitas. And he said, no, I want you to have it. And so I, you know, said, okay, I'll take it. And then he left. But then I noticed in the Bhagavad Gita there was this brown. There was in the pages of the book there was something brown there, you know, inserted in the pages. I thought, what's this? And I opened it up, and in it was $400, right? That he put in there. He wanted me to have the book, but he also wanted to give me a donation. Huh? So people will naturally want to reciprocate with a devotee. Naturally they want to. And so, and here's what Sukadeva is saying, right? Shuka, Uvacha, right? If you hear these topics, and this is what the devotees do, the devotees regularly hear the Bhagavatam every day, they want to hear. And it's interesting, you know, we're finding out now how important the darshan of the deities is for the devotees, who now can't come to the temple, you know. The importance of having an online facility for the devotees, even moving forward. We can see the advantage of it, the importance of it. Even if people can come to the temple, we should probably keep the Mangalatik and other darshans and kirtan and class available for the devotees because, it's part of our, it's what we do. It's an inspiration and it's part of the culture of spiritual life, you know, cultivation. Right? And why we should do it well. We should make sure that the darshan of the, and especially now it's live, but it's also recorded, and so it's on YouTube, you know. So if it's a bit ratty, then the devotees get in touch with, hey Prabhu, can you get whoever's doing the videography, can you get them to stand still? So you can't have too much ecstasy. No ecstasy. Just like, was it Daruka? It's described in the Nectar of Devotion. He was feeling symptoms of ecstasy while he was fanning Krishna, but then he had to check it because otherwise he'd drop the fan. So no rolling around on the floor, it just has to be seva, right? Seva, but that's also ecstasy, right? But look at the benefits. Naturally, the benefits that come from, what is it? Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya, right? Regularly rendering service to the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavat devotee, and the Bhagavat book. Nashta Prayasava Bhadreshu Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya. Destroys the inauspicious things. So here, long life, wealth, reputation, good fortune, opulence, and then ultimately param gati. It doesn't say param gati, but it says gati, same thing. But Prabhupada translates it as ultimate goal of life. Pretty good. Okay, Kandaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Hare Krishna.